Hey Kyle here. I am so excited to introduce you to Gabe in our Stories That Matter series, where we're interviewing different church planters to help you get to know them and their story. To live out our value, send over stay as part of Generations Church, where we embody Jesus by joining God's work in Vancouver, the West, and the world by mobilizing and releasing disciples. And that absolutely happens through new church planting. So, Gabe, I introduced you briefly, but help those who are going to watch this get to know you a little bit.
Well, thank you, Kyle and Generations, for the space and the time. Great to be in front of all you awesome folks up north here. I'm down in Eugene, Oregon. I haven't always been here. I'm a native of New York. Go Buffalo Bills, Western New York. They're hot in the playoffs right now. You can support me by cheering for them right now as well. But I moved to Oregon 20 years ago simply to have a pure adventure. And so it's probably no mystery God landed me in church planting, the greatest adventure in Jesus' ministry we can have. So I've spent most of the last 20 years in Oregon as a logger and transitioned midlife, mid-career into ministry. Got my degree in ministry at Bushnell University here in Eugene, and am now in the beginning stages of planting a new church, which we'll talk about more here as we go along. At home, I got a beautiful wife of 14 years, Gina, and three awesome little kiddos. My littlest Penelope is 7, my middle Sahaley 10, and my son is 13. His name is Athens, and they keep me about as busy as you can, apart from church planning work. So that's a little bit about me.
One of the questions that I've been asking every church planter is, what is church planting? That's a term that gets thrown out there. Generations is a church plant, but the picture and the actualization of church planting is usually different or nuanced for each person. So what is church planting, Gabe?
For me, and I think you're absolutely right, Kyle. It's so different for each different planner as God creates us all so uniquely. For me, it is very similar to my logging experience, which is very similar for those who don't know much about logging to a military experience. And so for me, church planting is front lines combat work. In our particular context, and we'll talk more about it later, it is that. It is a very hot, hostile terrain, if you will, for the gospel. And so I approach church planning as a roll up my sleeves, very physical effort, very gritty, very down to earth, with a lot of risk involved as we try to maneuver ourselves in this toxic environment to be people of hope and peace. And so it is a little bit scary, a little bit exciting, and a little bit intense. But that's just the way that I kind of like things to be. So
You started there and helping people understand, hey, how your logging background has shaped what you see as a church plant is. Would you give us just another example from your personal story how God has prepared you to start a new church?
absolutely. And this will be a personal story from logging, pull out of that little well because it's a good one. Uh, in my logging experience, one of the first things that happened was I was a greenhorn, a rookie on the logging site. Being from Buffalo, New York, I didn't even know what logging was really. And I got in over my head, just like I am right now as a church planter, by the way. And I was offered the opportunity to be the crew boss, the boss. And so I took it, and probably shouldn't have, but I took it. And one of the first things I had to really navigate was how to handle challenging people who had toxic feelings and thoughts about your leadership, your worldview, the way you want to do things. And it was a very visceral, real experience. There were times when I had to defend what I felt was the right thing to do with fisticuffs, because on the mountain there, it's a very lawless reality working up on a mountain in the Cascades with no law enforcement around. So it taught me how to be cool under pressure, how to engage people who are very against what you believe in, what you want to do, and navigate that well and bring them around to what you believe to be right and true, and share it with them in a way that is effective and sticks. And that is basically what we're trying to do here in Eugene, what you guys are doing up in Salmon Creek, what so many other church planters are doing all over the world, is being in a space where Christianity, where the person of Jesus, where his true hope and love is looked at in toxic ways, is pushed back against. People want no part of it. People are violent against it. And you have to be able to sit in that tension and face to face with those kind of folks and love them and work with them and sustain the attacks as they give them, knowing that it is merely their brokenness trying to shed itself off their hearts. That was one of the biggest things I learned from God, that God taught me up on the mountain. And as I walked down off the mountain, down onto the valley floor to grab a church and lead instead of a chainsaw, it's served me so well, so well.
Help people get to know a little bit about your church plant. What is the name and what is the vision? And I'm sure we'll see some of that connection between those stories and your story with the vision for the church.
So the name of the church is Everyone Church, and that comes out of Gospel of John, that beautiful first chapter where we see Jesus described as the light coming into the world for everyone. And I take that literally, that Jesus's love and light is for every single human on the planet. And so it is my intention, it is the intention of Everyone Church, to be that church in this space, in this community, that reaches out to those fringe places, those hard to reach places where that one is getting left behind, is getting lost in the mix, is struggling to stay attached to anything healthy and hopeful. And so we're, at least in this initial season, we're hopeful to be the combat medic church in our community. There are a lot of great churches in our community, just as there are in Salmon Creek and in a lot of places where people plant. So we want to be that unique church that does that particular work for the gospel. We need it all, right? We need churches that are helping saints transition across the Rainbow Bridge. We need churches that meet with people who want safe spaces, people that need safe spaces, but we want to be the combat medic church, the church that's reaching hard spots, hard places.
If you had to sum up your vision in like a single sentiment, what would you say like your mission and what you're trying to do is? I love the word picture there, but what is the kind of single vision or mission piece for Everyone Church?
It is go, grow. So a lot of churches, a lot of secular institutions will bring you into their purview or whatever they're doing, and they'll want to educate you and equip you and grow you and then release you. Our work at Everyone Church is flipping the script. We want to meet people where they're at, and whether they know Jesus or not, we want to release them to do good work for the kingdom. And so many people we're finding, that's a great interface. Service is a great first step into the kingdom of Jesus. It's not necessarily attaining academic knowledge of who Jesus is or understanding the breadth and scope of the Bible, or even interacting with the creative story of God's work. It is, hey, how can I help my fellow person? And once they're doing that, then we can start to attach those other parts of who Jesus is and bring them along.
Give those who are going to watch this an example of how you're already doing that.
So we are in Eugene, Oregon, which is the highest per capita for homeless people in the United States of America. It is a crisis here. It is crippling the city and the community. It is just another example of something that's causing fracture and division within our neighborhoods. And it's very prominent in the neighborhood of Eugene we are in. And so we reached out to the City of Eugene Police Department and the city manager's office and started a pilot program to reach the homeless people where they're at and send them, get them going for Jesus first. And so we have a program where they have been allowed to stay and live on the church property, and in exchange, every Saturday morning for 2 to 3 hours, they're doing community service projects in the neighborhood. They're giving back to local business owners. They're helping to police the homeless people that are in the area with nefarious purposes to get them out of the mix and change the paradigm of homelessness. And along the way, as they do that, they're gaining self-worth from going. And then I'm just naming that self-worth as the person of Jesus loving on you and the spirit that is in you or should be in you if you accept him as Lord and Savior. So going, self-worth, growing, and now we bring in the further development of discipleship. And an interesting little tidbit out of that, these homeless folks that are part of this program have taken that ownership and that self-worth, and the spirit is lifting and growing inside of them. And not too long ago, they were approached by a local business owner that said, hey, we need landscaping work done. We see what you're doing in other parts of the neighborhood. Can we pay you to do that? And they said, well, we'll totally do your landscaping, but we won't take any of your money. This is a homeless individual that said this.
Mm.
And you know what they said? They said, we're not here to earn money and make a better way for us. We're here to change the paradigm of homelessness in this neighborhood and show that we can all coexist for the betterment of the neighborhood.
That's
I
such
wish
a,
I could be that amazing. I wish I could be that amazing.
mm, that's so so good. Such a
Oh man.
rich story. As you look forward with you're at work, you're doing this work. As you look forward at the next year, what are you most excited for? And what is weighing on you the most as you look towards this next year?
What I'm most excited about is this past season of life for all of us has been such a difficult terrain to navigate, and trying to start a people gathering movement during quarantine has been exceedingly challenging. So just really practically, to be really honest and upfront with you guys, what I'm most excited about is the possibility that in the next year things will begin to open up, the vaccine will make its way around, and we will be able to do some more of those big people gathering events in the community without having to navigate governor's orders and such. And so that prospect is exciting, but even more exciting than that is the hope and dream that as we gain traction and really start to run down the runway, we're going to get cracks in those dark spots, and stories are going to start to come out like the one I just shared. And those stories are what are going to attract people to the person of Jesus. And so I'm excited for an explosion of those stories, for hope to come out of that. And what I'm most fearful of is that people that we want to reach, this harder to reach segment of the neighborhood, are so entrenched in the fear and the hurt and the brokenness that it's been exacerbated by the last year that they are going to be unwilling to be reached with the hope and love of Jesus. So I certainly don't think that will be the case, but in the dark watches of the night, I worry that the darkness is so dark that I don't have enough light to break it.
You're on a journey, and you've got these hopes and these fears, and the thing is you aren't alone. You're part of something bigger. You're a part of a work of God that transcends just a small corner of the lot in Eugene. And so, my question is, Gabe, is how can those who live in Vancouver best support you as you attempt to crack open that darkness and see the light break through?
I'm an emotional fella, if you haven't gathered. So I'm going to make it two pleas here, a plea emotionally and a plea practically. I'll start with the practical one because we should always end on the emotions. The practical plea would be as we get momentum into the next year down here in Eugene, it's just a very tough time for fundraising as everybody feels the financial weight of the last year coming in down on them. And so financial support is always appreciated. You can do that, and I can help you figure out how to do that, and Kyle can as well. Prayer support is always a big one, and to me, that is actually more practical than emotional. The emotional plea I would make is this: be the light in the dark spots around you. So we all need to do this together. Kyle, you just highlighted that with your sentiment that I'm not alone, that I'm a part of a bigger fabric. And you guys up at Generations are doing amazing work. I hear about it all the time. So you should know that your stories are making their way to Eugene in a big way, and that's amazing. But don't be afraid. Be willing to take a risk. Find that dark spot around you and take your light into it. And if the stories I've shared can help inspire you to do that, awesome. And then I've made a success of myself today on this day. And if you ever need inspiration or motivation to attack those dark spots, to be willing to just stand in those spaces that are hard to stand in and be okay just being in them. That's where you start. You just be in the space that's hard to be in. Kyle's your go-to guy. He will help you with that. But if you can't reach him, you give me a call. I'll inspire you. But let's just commit to each other, to support each other, and being willing to go into those dark places where the light is needed so much. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, big time geeky nerd that way. And I always remember that scene where the Galadriel hands Samwise the light, the little lantern, and says, "May it be a light to you when all of the lights go out." And I'm here to tell you, in the trenches where I'm spending time, lights are going out. every day, and a lot of them. We need to start taking our light into those spaces because we're losing lights every day. And I don't know about you, but I'm sure you feel the same way I do. Every light matters, and we don't want them to go out.
Gabe, this has been fabulous. You're such an inspiration and encouragement to see how God is at work through you and your family and Eugene. So thank you for taking a few minutes to sit down with me and to share your story with us.
Hey, Kyle, it's been a pleasure and an honor. And the same to you folks up in Salmon Creek with Generations Church and your partners in the community. You're an inspiration to us down here in Eugene, like I said. So thank you. And we'll look forward to sharing more stories up and down the I-5 corridor over the next year.